Hi guys, so this is your second part to the lesson. Okay, so this is Wednesday's lesson. For this one, what we're going to do is just do a few techniques. We're not creating a final image for this one. It doesn't need to be complete. It's just us working around it, just so then we've got all our ideas. So then on Friday, you can have a go at creating your own complete one, depending on what materials you've got available. Okay, so what we're going to look at today, I've got my pencil still. I've still got my HB, I've still got my 4B, and I've still got my 8B. I've got my picture that I drew on Monday. Again, just a rough sketch. It was just to get all the different plate things in place. Okay, I've also got some watercolors here. These are I'll use these for a little bit just to show you how I would use those. I've also got some colored pencils. I've not got lots of different colors. I've just got a few different variations just because these are the ones that mainly are in the picture that I was using. Okay, I might not have all of these, so maybe a yellow I could have used, maybe for the really light bits, but I haven't got that. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to make sure I use what I've got. Okay, I've also got some chalk. Okay, you could also use wax crayons. It's up to you. Whatever you've got available, use those, and we'll have a go from there. Okay, obviously if you're using watercolors, you need a little pot of water as well, which I've got, and a paintbrush. Okay, now those, again, if you're using copier paper that you've used out of a printer, okay, that paper will not need a lot of water. If you put too much water on it, it goes all wrinkly, and then your paper goes a bit soggy and not as strong. Okay, so try to use as little water as possible. Okay, I've got a little bit thicker. Mine can be a little bit wetter, but I'll try and do it as dry as I can, just so then you can see how it works. Okay, now on my picture, I'm going to just do a few bits of shading as well with my pencils, these three different pencils. Okay, I'm going to use a little bit of shading, show you some different types of shading that you can use, show you some colours and how I would put those in as well. Okay, so let's get started. So first of all, I'm going to start with my HB pencil. If you've only got this and you've not got any of those, you can just solely work off a HB pencil. If you've got some darker ones like I have, you can also use those. Obviously, the higher the number of B, so on this one it is an 8B, that's the highest one you'll normally get. If the higher it is of the B class, means that it's going to be darker. Okay, so that you don't have to press on as hard, but you'll get dark. But if you want to press on really hard, you'll get really dark lines. Okay, I'm just going to start with a HB first, and I'm going to look at different parts of what I can use. I'm going to focus on the areas that are grey, because obviously a grey pencil, it's going to work best. Okay, so with this, I've got some darker bits down here. Now this is this bit on my picture, so I'm holding quite a far away from my pencil end. Okay, so I'm gonna use it sideways. I'm not pressing on too hard. I'm going backwards and forwards, keeping that range, because I can got a lot of range with that. Okay, if I wanted to get it, does go a little bit darker at this corner, and it goes slightly lighter. So I'm going to keep it and go across, get that shading in. I'm not doing the whole thing, I'm just practicing. Remember, this isn't my final picture. But I want this bit a bit darker. Now, if I've got only a HB, I press on a bit harder and put those in. If I've got a darker pencil like my 8B, I don't need to do it as dark, as hard. I just do it lightly and get that in. Again, very dark line underneath. This bit I'm going to do quite dark, so I'm going to press on quite hard. Obviously don't press on too hard, because if you press on too hard, your pencil will snap. Okay, so that's quite dark under there. Okay, so that's just showing you a little bit of shading technique of how you can get different variations. I've only done it one way there. Now if you wanted to do it a cross-hatching way, you can do it one way, and then you can go the opposite way. That's another good way of getting that shading technique. You can also, if you wanted to, if you have got 8Bs, these are really good for smudging. So I'm going to do it on the top bit here. So I'm going to just do a little bit across, very lightly. But to get a smooth, I've got quite a bit of texture in there. But if I wanted it smooth, okay, I could just use my finger and just spread across. Always go in the same direction. Okay. Now, looking at colour, if I wanted to use some colour, I can use some chalk in there, I can use some pencils. Now I'm going to use coloured pencils because most people might have these lying around. These reeds in front are quite a lot darker than the bushes behind, okay? So if I'm doing that, I don't want to be doing my dark areas first. I want to get my light ones first. So I will use a lighter colour pencil, like a green, first, because if I do the darker one first, it's very hard to go over with a lighter colour pencil over the top. So I'm just going to bring them out and I'm going to flick them up. Flicking them up makes it go really into a point. If I did it, just drew it up, okay, it will get a very square edge, which I don't want. Okay, so I'm going to flick it up. And this is all about being confident with the pencil. Okay. In. Now, at the bottom, it's a little bit darker. So I'm just going to press on a little bit harder, but not go up as far this time. Okay. And then if I swap to my other colour pencil. Take your time with this, you don't have to rush. Okay, I can do it a little bit quicker. I have a little bit more, maybe a little bit more confident with the pencil. Okay, and you can add them in a bit further. Now the bush behind is completely different type of movement. Okay, I'm going to just do little specks like this in different ways, adding that texture in. Okay, now what you might find is that you're leaving lots of white gaps behind. Now if that's the case, you can colour in first, very lightly, only lightly there. So you've got that, go a couple of different ways, and then a little bit darker, putting them on. And that will give you that little green behind. So there's lots of different techniques there. Okay, if you're using chalk, chalk is very good for smudging. Okay, so it's good for large areas. Maybe the grass if I use this green. Okay, so if I'm going to do this, I'm going to use a darker green at the top and more of a lighter green here. I can always put these darker bits in afterwards. Okay, so I'm going to start with a lighter one. I'm going to just do a couple of lines, only lightly. There, okay. Then using my finger, make sure you use a cleaner finger if you've already done some smudging, and just drag it up just to cover that area of grass. You can do it sideways and we get that covered in. Now if I wanted to get a bit darker in there, just to show these shaded areas, just do a bit dark at the top. I'm just going to do very lightly, just coming across like that, and then again using a different finger, I'm just going to smudge that across. It's a bit darker, and then just smudge those in, and I get that little bit of shading in the grass. Now I wanted a little bit more darker, it's a little bit too light up here. Okay, so I'm just going to just do again here, across, and again smudge it in, and you can see that contrast. Okay, and that's where I would use that shading. Okay, again, I'm only doing sections here. I'm just practicing and seeing which one I prefer best. At the moment, I feel this one's very, very blurred at the moment. It doesn't look as much detail in there, which is great because Monet does it in that type of fluid style. But I'm finding that this will get me maybe a much more defined picture. And then obviously I can also go in black and white if I wanted to do it that way. Let's have a look at watercolour now. Okay, so if I'm looking at watercolour, I'm going to first of all use my brush. Okay, get it a little bit wet, and then I'm going to just with this bit, I'm going to be just doing a little bit of the grass over this area. Now we have got some white blocks in here. You don't have to include everything that you see. If you didn't want those white blocks in, you don't need to include them. Okay, it's all about what you want to use. Okay, I've also got some reeds in front. So first of all, I'm just going to put a little bit of grass behind. Okay, again, making sure your pencil, your paintbrush is wet but not too wet. Now, as you can see with that, it's not as quite the green that I wanted. So I'm just going to get a little bit more. I've not used any more water. I'm just using a little bit more green, and that's much better. Okay, you don't have to keep going back to it. You keep going as much. I'm going to get rid of these blocks because I'm not quite sure if I want to use those. Okay, again, not going back to the water, just going to the paint. and then I'm putting those in. Once you find that it's not stretching as far the paint, like mine is now, I would just a tiny little dab of water, only a tiny bit, and then back to the paint. Okay. Now, I want to see if I can just put, I've got a very light bit here, so I'm going to just bring this across here. Now, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to use a little bit of yellow. Now, it's very easy to smudge all your paints together if you're using this. So try your best not to use, to wash your brush between each one, okay? A little bit of yellow in there. And I can get that in, okay? Just adding that contrast of colours. Now, I want a little bit of darker up at the top, okay? Wet my brush, go into the dark green. Make sure you get lots of colour on there. If you find that it's a bit too much, then wipe your brush off a bit, okay? Gonna go over that. One thing you need to remember is with watercolours is that if you're keep going over and over and over something, it's going to make your paper very soggy, okay? So let it dry before you go on to the next layer, okay? With me, I've got my paper's quite thick, so it's allowing my paper to dry a little bit quicker. And I'm also not using a lot of water, okay? So you keep doing that. Have a go, practice your different colours, your different types of pencils, paints, chalks if you've got them. If you've not, just stay with your normal pencil and see if you can create different techniques throughout there, okay? Again, when you're doing these, if you flick it up, you'll get some nice lines, okay? And have a go. Do your best and let's see what you get up with. Again, this is not getting a final picture. All you're doing is just deciding on which ones work best, which ones you feel are going to get the best quality for your style, and have a go with that. When it comes to it, on Friday, you can do one of each if you fancy it, or it's up to you can just stick with one, okay? Try to make sure that you just stay with one of those different styles, but you can do more than one picture if you want to, okay? Have a go, and I can't wait to see what they look like.